Yep. Okay, we are live. Welcome everyone to this Wednesday's show, Unbroken. We are here today with Steve Paddon, my friend, and Bridges and Balm. And we were just talking about how long you've been doing this and how much you do, and it's a lot. So kudos to you, my friend. Located in California, but raised in Oregon.
Yeah, I was born in California and then grew up in Oregon. Yeah, Southern Oregon.
Got it. So tonight we are going to learn a lot about Bridges and Balm. I'm going to let you even explain what Bridges and Balm always does everything because I don't want to get it wrong. So we're going to start tonight. We have kind of a little bit of a plan, but let's start, get right at it because we have a lot to cover in a little bit of time. The mission and the purpose of Bridges and Balm and kind of how that came about.
Yeah. Um, well, it exists for the same reason as, where you like to say, uh, just people that care. And it has two missions. One is to fund therapy for survivors of sexual abuse and child sexual abuse. And so we work as the arm that raises money and pays therapists. Um, and then we also have another fund that we manage that is for helping former workers transition, if they're able to, back into the workforce, or if they're aged out, just to live on an ongoing basis to afford not being in abject poverty and in very vulnerable positions. So those are our two primary missions. Um, we're just one of many grassroots organizations that came out of 2023. There was the Wanted Act Fund, which has gotten some press lately, but that's a similar grassroots effort. Some very caring, concerned people that were involved in making that one happen. There's one in Oregon called ORCID, which is similar, another grassroots. Obviously, FTT came out of the gates, was the big entity that was providing a therapy fund. Same with Voices for the Truth. Um, then United Open Arms now exists. So there's a variety of grassroots organizations that have stepped up, and it's great. Like there's diversity in the ecosystem, so that it's not dependent on one entity. Renewal North has just formed, so they have taken on the Canadian um, scope for the same thing that we do. They do both former worker support as well as helping raise funds for therapy for survivors. So that's our mission, and we're basically a bunch of people that are mostly on the West Coast that knew each other and figured we had the skills to try to do something in our area, and just tried to figure it out as we went. And some very talented people involved that just have chosen to step up, and so we formed a 501(c)(3) in at the very end of 2023, and have been up and running ever since.
So I'm sure you're going to get into this in the next question, which is the scope of the need, but I just want to make sure that everybody knows that when workers leave, they don't get anything.
Yeah.
They get very little bit. I'll let you answer that. So question number two is the scope of the need. How many people are you serving? Why do you have to serve work? All that. I'm going to just let you answer it.
Yeah. So currently we have about 22 former workers that we're helping on a regular monthly basis, basically a stipend, and then we're funding therapy for about 35 survivors currently. Um, that comes out to about 30,000 a month that costs. Um, that we have also, some people come in and out, so that number does vary a little bit. Some people take a break or go stop their therapy for a while at least, and then some come on. And the same thing with former workers. Sometimes we'll have former workers come in where they just ask us to help them with some training, but they're not asking for ongoing support. Um, and so those are the two. So it just focus on the former workers. Yeah, that why do they need support? And this one's it's interesting to think about this, and I interviewed with Whitney a while back and really got into like what a shock it was to realize what happened to foreign workers and what happens to foreign workers. And I have a sister who was in the work for 10 years, so I kind of knew what she went through, but she really wasn't that open before. She is now. And when we wrote the charter, we had to explain in our 501(c)(3) application, you have to describe why there's a need for getting this tax deduction for donations to your organization. And on the survivor front, there was enough publicity to kind of make it pretty clear, like clearly there's abuse survivors, and the government wasn't going to question that because there was plenty of press and FBI investigation and all that to support it. But for former workers, they're invisible to society. Like people don't even know they exist, right? Like they're not filing taxes. Like they're just basically don't, the government doesn't even hardly know other than before they went to work, they have a social security number, but there's no evidence that anything's happening. And so it was really hard to explain, like, well, they they go into this ministry that doesn't pay them a wage, that doesn't pay into their social security, it doesn't give them any unemployment insurance, it doesn't provide health insurance in most cases. They just get care on public entitlements or paid cash. Like there's all these things that you have to explain, and then what's the hardest thing to realize is, and when they decide to kick them out or they tap out and they're like, I can't continue to do this, they're just kicked to the curb. Like they're maybe given a few $1,000s the most, and it's expected to, okay, well, good luck. You're on your own. And there are some people, and well, I have a cousin that's in this category who's super driven, promptly left the work and started his own business and became a millionaire very quickly. And so people look at that and they're like, what's the big deal? God will provide. And on the other hand, what they're missing is that some people leave the work completely broken. They can't even get out of bed. And now they're just like in the cold, hard reality of, wow, there's bills to pay. I need a roof over my head. And literally some of them are homeless that we've helped, like literally not functional at all. And so it's a wide range of um where they end up. And I think of it as, I think of the work, um we're really going to get into the kind of jumping around in this, but
That's
if you
okay.
think about what that environment's like it's really kind of the Lord of the Flies kind of environment. It's very much a hierarchy in a very small clique. And if I grew up on a farm, we had chickens, and if you walk in the chicken pen, you've got the the hen with all the feathers, and you've got the hen with no feathers left. And there's a pecking order. And if you're on the bottom of that, life is rough. When you're on the top, your self-esteem may still be intact, right? And so it literally is that brutal environment, where like just if you're inside the inner circle, you might not be terribly, suffer so much different kind of abuse, and might have your esteem somewhat intact when you leave the work. But if you're really down on list and you're just attacked ongoing and you're just treated so poorly, maybe some of the things they'll do is like, if you're not in the favored group, maybe you'll go be the caretaker for this older sister worker 3 years in a row, and you're basically just a caretaker, and that's your punishment for how so that's, it's just a very, like, I have a really good friend who's a former worker, extremely smart guy, extremely well educated, like emotional intelligence off the charts. And I asked him, like, well, tell me what it's like to be in the work. Like, how would you put it into words? And he said, I can't even start that. And I'm thinking, if this person cannot put that experience into words, like that tells me how hard it is for me to relate. Like you had Natalie on recently and talking about the cult characteristics of this organization. That's the broader organization. The work, the ministry is very much a whole nother level of that I don't
Oh,
think we can really comprehend. It's a cult within a cult, and it's just a very different environment. It's a very much a bubble. Um, and and so why do they need help? Well, because like that environment is just a crucible to their mental health. And depending on what they go through, they're going to have a lot of pieces to pick up. And so that's like that, and this has been true forever with this church. Like people have left the work in pieces. since the early 1900s.
Yep.
And so it like this has always been needed. People just like didn't pay attention. I guess they somehow they figured it out. We didn't know because they left to work and never saw them again, or if I did, they somehow seemed to be getting by. I don't know.
Well, we had a language for it, and we softened all of it. We never called it what it was, ever, never.
Yeah.
They needed a rest. And 9 times out of 10, I can remember them being blamed for like they just couldn't take it or they couldn't,
Well, even worse, they were going against God's will now by leaving,
Yeah, right.
and so they were vilified. Like, well,
Yes,
they don't deserve support because they're not doing what God wants.
right. So just to be clear to everybody out there, if somebody gives 10, 20, 30 years of their life or more, they're literally kicked to the curb in most cases.
Well, in
Right.
no case are they
There's no
supported.
retirement. No, they're
Like
not
like
supported. Right. Just
like they're given a little bit at most. And but if you leave, the community just basically rejects you largely. You're on your own.
right. Okay, so I don't want to get stuck there because that just is a sticking point. Um, Scope of the need. Keep going. That was very clear.
Yeah. So I think the reality is like 2 out of every 3 workers that start in the work don't finish. So it's this lifetime commitment. So that means when you think about a workers list, over time, 66% of them are going to leave and need some kind of support. So that gives you an idea of how big the need is. One of the things that we don't do, and we've been asked this, and it's kind of a tricky, like we don't publish a list of former workers. Uh, and the reason why we don't do that is because it, again, this gets into the whole idea of secrecy versus transparency and confidentiality. Like we don't disclose, we don't actually even know who the survivors are that we're helping with therapy. That's so we can get into that, how we work with uh, pathways for that. But that's with foreign workers, there's just a few of us that know within the team who we're helping out. And that's totally their information. Like we are not going to share that we're supporting a former worker. Like that
Right.
is potentially even dangerous to their community for that to be found out. Like we're pretty vilified by a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so that's totally their information. They may disclose it, and some of them do. Some of them shout it from the rooftops that they're very happy we exist, and but that's a tricky thing. Like so the need is hard to really know. We know there's lots of former workers out there. Lots are probably struggling. Would they be willing to accept help from us? That's a different story. Like one of the things I've reflected on since in the last few years is when I was in 18, I had 2 friends that I was close to, one much closer than the other, that were in the work, barely, just briefly in the work. One was under Harold Bennett as overseer, and one was under Leslie White. Both of them were in their work briefly and then just disappeared. Like literally, I in one case I never even saw him again, just off the map completely. The other one I traveled across the country to see, and I just saw him once and then never saw him again. Like whatever happened to them was so traumatic that they just wanted out of the community 100%. Like they just checked out. And so one of the things that we have to be very respectful of is some of them may want to have nothing to do with the community,
Yes.
X or otherwise, and we respect that. Like we want them to know we exist and we're here to help, but that's their totally up to them whether they want to actually get help from us. And so that's where it's really dicey to figure out how do we do like marketing. And that's one of the asks I have is that whenever, almost without fail, when I talk to former workers about who was the most helpful for them when they first left their work, almost every time it was somebody that used to go to meetings but no longer does. So it was somebody in the broader community but not currently attending. And a lot of times they were like people with the intention to go back maybe someday, but they weren't. Um, and and so what that tells you is that is the kind of the marketing that we have to do in this demographic. It has to be people that they trust that go to them and say, "Hey, I'm aware this entity exists. I'm willing to help you, but there's actually a lot more people willing to help you. If you trust this organization to help you, they're there for you. It's totally up to you, and I won't even know necessarily. I advocate for you if you want." But that's really one of the things we need is for these former workers, their trusted confidants, to make them aware that we exist and have them reach out to us because we're not gonna like. Can you imagine we send an email and say, "Hey, you're a former worker and maybe you would like support from us?" Like they'd be like, "How'd you get
Right.
my email?" Right?
Right.
Like, right? It's
Right.
totally. offensive for
Right.
us to do market that way. And yet the
Yes.
need obviously is huge if you just look at
Right.
the raw numbers of people that have left the work.
Well, you're answering why I wanted you on the show. That's the reason. That, and I want people to know that how much you need, what the need is, so that we can help support it financially. But I'm going to let you keep going. Okay. I love that. Thank you.
Yeah. So maybe move on to like what these donations actually do. Like what
Yes.
do we do?
Yes.
um, so let me start with the way Survivors works. And this works pretty much anybody that uses Pathways, which most of the organizations now do, with the exception of the Wanda Dak Fund. Most of them now use Pathways because Pathways is a bunch of clinical therapists that understand things like privacy and confidentiality and secure information, HIPAA compliance, all these things that you need to know as a professional, which we don't as an organization have all those things in place. So we have all survivors, if they come to our website, they're going to be redirected to Pathways and say, talk to Natalie's group, and they will onboard you. And there's a few reasons why that's really important. We've had some survivors come to us directly when they saw us as trusted people where they could come to us directly, or they had advocates come to them. But it's really kind of scary because we're not experts on the subject, like what is good therapy, what's a good therapist, and all these funds have had these learning curves that are really kind of dangerous, where they'll have survival self-select their therapists, and they'll be doing things that's not even right, like with legal because they're in the wrong state, like the therapist is not in the same state, things they or this nature, or it's not the right kind of therapy for what they need. And so one of the things that Pathways does that's really valuable is they evaluate with the therapist that they connect them to, whether they bring their own therapist or not, and make sure they're in a treatment plan that makes sense and that the cost structures make sense and they're within normal ranges. And then they come to one of the entities, us being one of them, and they'll say, hey, we have a survivor that wanting to onboard them, and this is the treatment plan, this is how many sessions that we're committed to initially. And then if we can afford it, we green light it and we just start paying it. And then what happens from there is their therapist just invoices directly with an ID that Pathways gives us, and we just pay it. So we're literally just committing to supporting that um, set of therapy for some anonymous survivor, and but we have confidence, because it relies on trust that the folks at Pathways know what they're doing and are vetting the survivors, and they qualify with our constraints, which is that they've been abused within the church, and then we trust that they're sometimes, and there's some give and take, like sometimes we'll get a plan like, wow, that's a little above the normal range, are you sure that's can we evaluate if that therapy cost is appropriate and if it's justified, and then they might push back, or they might say no, that's really justified, and we go ahead and pay it. So that's how the survivor process works. And um, and so the Pathways is a crucial entity. We basically fund it, but they make sure the right care is being received. The other thing that happens there that I think is really important to consider: in the past, we had a few survivors who really wanted to accelerate their healing. And so they would go to one entity and say, hey, pay for my therapy. Go to another entity and say, hey, pay for my therapy. And they would be doubling up, like getting more therapy and we didn't know that was happening. And that's actually dangerous to try for a survivor to really try to accelerate their therapy.
Mhm.
And so when it's kind of falling in through one entity, they can monitor that, say, no, we're not going to recommend that you double up your therapy and just do lots more treatment than maybe your mind can actually handle. And so that's also an advantage of everything kind of flowing through Pathways through all these different entities that actually bankroll the therapy.
I
So
just
that's
want to
one.
clarify too that Pathways does it for Canada and the United States. So Tina Days is making that point. So I just want to clarify to everyone that Pathways is the way. So Natalie's going to be back on to just explain Pathways and what their process is, but that's not for a couple of weeks. So we'll talk about that in a couple of weeks for anybody out there. But anyway, okay, go ahead. So that's the process for them. What else?
Okay, so then former workers. Former workers is far more complicated because we don't have Pathways entity to kind of do all the onboarding. So we have a team of people that does onboarding of former workers who come to us and want support. And this is very different. Like if they need therapy for that side of it, which generally they are going to definitely need therapy as well, we have them route that still through pathways too. Everything else we handle. So there's things like help with housing, help with education, will help with just basic needs, food, shelter. So what we would do is we work with them to basically build look at their current budget, what their cost structures are. Well, first of all, we make sure they're safe. So if they're homeless, we'll literally get them into housing, get them off the streets, and that doesn't happen very often, but that has happened. Normally, and in most cases, they're already kind of in a stable situation, but they're underwater, and so they'll provide a budget, and they're going backwards, or they're just going without because they can't, they're not making enough money, or they don't have a job yet, and they're just depleting the little money they have. And so we'll work with them to build a budget, and then we'll use public entitlements, things like Section 8 housing. We'll help them get into that, or if that's not available initially, we'll get them to housing that can be transitioned to Section 8. Things like food stamps, things like uh, welfare, if they qualify for that, if they're like over 65 and they can get on that as an entitlement. We try to uh, minimize their costs and maximize their income uh, with things that are already available to them that they likely don't know about. And then from there, we'll cover the gap to make sure they're at least not going backwards. And so then, based on the budget, we'll look at the gap, and that will basically generate a stipend for them monthly, and then revisit that every 6 months to make sure they're moving forward. And often, what happens is they'll they'll be working so much, and also like they're going school full time and working full time if they're in a place where they can actually do that. But that means it's going to take forever for them to finish their degree, and they're already maybe in their mid 40s. And so we'll say, okay, what would it look like if you ramp down your work hours? We're going to need to increase our support, but that means you can take on more coursework and get into a higher paying job more quickly. And so that's the kind of things we'll also work with them to make sure that we're trying to really help drive their income side in the near term, so that they're getting into a better financial statement early on. Again, this is people that are young enough to actually do this. Sometimes they're just seniors that we're just making sure they're okay and
Yeah,
making sure their basic needs are covered.
right.
So, but you
Do
can
you offer
imagine,
education as well?
yeah. So often that we're helping with their education. We also have people that will do career advice for them. Career advice for somebody in their mid 40s is different. We have people that will talk to them. I was just talking to some foreign workers who were also giving, they were like providing their resumes for when they were left the work, and how to make their years in the work look like work history, like all these tricks
Right.
of the
Yeah.
trade that they've been very successful with, but are not obvious at all,
Right.
how they were able to do that. The types of careers tend to be in hospitality and healthcare, because a lot of the things that they've learned as workers translate somewhat well, to just being good in those kind of workforces. But that's not for everybody. So there's career counseling that we have people that volunteer to help them with as well. um, and and yeah, it's basically case management. You can imagine it's public service type of entity that is taking on, each one's a very unique case. It's very hands on. It's very very complicated. Every situation is its own unique thing, but there are standard processes that you leverage to try to make that not so complicated.
Right. Amazing. Totally amazing. And this is, thank you. This is information that everybody needs to know what you're doing because I don't think a lot of people have any idea. So I don't
Yeah.
want to waste a minute of time. You go. Okay,
Yeah.
so and talk to us for just a second about what that actual cost looks like. You gave us a number already of what your monthly
Yeah. So yeah, between so for a foreign worker, that we're usually their stipends usually between $700 to $1,300 a month is be the typical range. Can go higher than that, and in some cases lower. And it varies. We're talking, sometimes this is family with kids that we're supporting. Sometimes it's individuals in Southeast Asia, where it's a lot lower costs because of where they live.
right,
Um, and so it varies a lot by where, but we try to support them where they need to live. There's sometimes they're not in the cheapest area to live, but that's where their support community is.
Right.
So that's where they need to be. And then if it gets way out of that range, both on the therapy side as well as individuals, then we look to do like specific fundraisers for that individual. We've only had to do that once, so usually we can find a way to work with them to keep it in our standard range. One of the things that we do, and we're really careful of, and this is a really important point. One of the things that it happens with former workers or workers in general as they age out, that it's very uneven how they're treated. If they were favored, they might be in a nice care home or a nice retirement home. We see that with Harold Bennett. Um, Whereas if they're not, they might be just thrown into the public entitlement system and they're in very low end Section 8 housing, or they're in long term care that is government provided, or VA, whatever, maybe if they qualify for VA. So it's really uneven how, and we don't want to be guilty of that. And so we try really hard to have standard processes so that everybody's treated fairly within what we can afford to do. But that's hard, right? Like it doesn't mean everybody's getting the same amount of money because the cost of living is different in different
Right.
locations and so on. And then when we do things that are special, like just a good example of this, I was just talking to a former worker who hadn't seen her family in a few years, and like very close to her family. And so we came with a policy. Yeah, we will conclude a trip home to see your family, once a year, as one of the things that we will fund if asked for. But that needs to be a policy so that it's available to all of them. If we're going to do that, we have to do it fairly. And so those are the kind of things that we work on as a team, as a board, to kind of make sure we try to operate fairly as much as possible, and don't ourselves just play favorites on.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's a hard thing to find balance on.
Yep. Well, that leads us right into transparency and accountability. So, talk to us about who oversees all of this, what your annual reports look like. Uh,
Yeah, so a couple things. One of them is the most common way you people evaluate nonprofits is their tax ID, their 990 form. And so our 990 is available on our website, bridgesandbalm.org, and we have it for 2025. And it shows that we basically all the money in went out to one of those two funds, with the exception of our expenses, which run just over 5%. And that 5% is mostly transaction fees with banks, because we're sending money all over the world. They take a cut when we send money to, say, the Philippines. And, it's expensive to do those kind of things. So, but that's just part of the job. And so that's where our costs, we have things like insurance too. So we have some basic costs, and that costs about 5% of our total budget last year. Probably will be less than that this year. 100% of our
can I
staff.
stop you right there?
Yeah.
I want to make it very, very clear to anyone listening that this is 100% volunteer on all of your parts, that every single one of you spend hours and hours and hours of your life doing this and do not get paid for it. Okay. I just want to make that point. So go ahead.
Yeah, and it's such an interesting thing because, like, part of one of the things that has been drilled into us is the concept of free labor. Like, everything that was done for the workers was free labor, and it's how cults operate, right? Free labor is how they function.
Yep.
And so I'm a little bit torn about that, because, like, yes, we're 100% volunteer, we none of us get paid a dime, and I think it's really important for this community because you're conditioned to assume that's true. That's not how most charities work. Most
No.
charities are paid. You get, you have operators. You maybe 20% of your in money coming in actually goes to the cause. The rest goes to pay people's salaries. Which
Yeah.
that's how normal things work. And we have no intention of going there. We plan to always be volunteer based, but that means you burn people out. Like, it's not like it doesn't come with costs. Like, it's costing people their time and their expertise. And so what we try to do to combat that is to have lots of jobs that aren't a lot of hours commitment, so that, yeah, if somebody's doing 5 hours a week on a regular basis, it's not a huge commitment.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to get to as we get to something more sustainable. I remember when we were looking at AFTT and those poor ladies. It's like it's like they were running a marathon at a 100-meter sprint pace, right out of the gates. We're gonna go full bore until we pass out.
And
And
do
I
it
was like,
all.
yeah, and I was like, yeah, that's not going to sustain. Like, you can't run flat out
Yeah.
indefinitely. And so that's just kind of the reality. Um, So
I was
we
part of
don't.
that, so I remember. Yeah. No,
I mean,
it
and
was painful.
we
What's that?
may, and maybe we'll like we may contract out some things like bookkeepers like that if we can keep the costs
Right,
really low, so that we don't have everything always. But everybody that's on the board, everybody that's actually part of the organization is unpaid.
right.
Um, that we have, we have a board. The board major people on the board: Dave Martin, who's the original founder and the director, and then Paul Svensson's our treasurer. I'm the secretary, and then Laura Stack was just voted in as our new vice president for 2020, starting in 2026. So those are the main people involved. And then we have, I think, four more people on our board that you know, drives. And then we have some other people that are not board members that are volunteers that work on either the worker committee or the survivor committee or the website committee on different committees, marketing, social media. So there's always roles for other people, but that's kind of the main people making it happen.
Okay. Safeguards against misuse. I just want to address that very quickly.
Yeah. So a lot of that, what's nice about that is we are a public charity. We have to file where the money goes, and
Yep.
if we're dishonest, we go to jail.
Yep.
Like that's how
I,
it works
I
in
just
the
wanted to
world.
clarify that because not everybody knows that. Like, and coming out of the world that we came out of, a lot of people don't understand that. And I just want to be very clear that you are running a 501c3 charitable organization. You must file lots of different filings. Everything you do is under scrutiny. So, and when people give money to you, it's very clear where it goes. So I just, part of this is a two-part education of what in the world do you all do, which is wild, but also that there are already built in safeguards to any 501c3. So that's really the point that I wanted to make. Okay.
What other thing we do, if you go to our website and the top tab, it says who we are. It's under who we are. There's a link that says fund overview and activity. Like literally, it's basically real time. You can see the money coming in, the money going out, where it's going to. So we have charts on there that we update very regularly, and that's part of our commitment to charity. That people can anytime go and look and see where the money going in, how much we have on our operating budget, and if there's anything that people want to know, as long as it's not things we need to keep confidential, and that when we say confidential, the only thing that's really confidential is who's receiving the money. And honestly, that's problematic in itself, right? Because like we can't disclose survivors and we can't disclose the foreign workers. That's their information. But then as a donor, you're like, okay, well, how do I know the money's actually going to them? Like
Right.
that is the tricky thing that we have to balance. And what is happening slowly is we're having people that are survivors as well as foreign workers that are coming forward saying, yes, this is who is supporting me. And so it's becoming obvious that some people clearly are validating end to end that that's who they're supporting. We could show receipts of paid therapists, but it's just an ID number. So it's like, okay, we can prove to the government that it's going to the cause. We can show receipts of who's going to, but that information is confidential to the point where we can't actually prove the individuals ourselves directly, and we wouldn't be able to because of confidentiality. So there's an element of trust there that is there, and if we were pocketing the money, that's where the government's auditing us and putting us in jail would be. But as far as they wouldn't be like if we were giving it to somebody that wasn't a former worker, that'd be a lot harder for us to verify. And so, unfortunately, there is a trust element, and I think that's just the reality. If you donate to us, you want to make sure that you feel comfortable with the people behind it are people of integrity. I mean, there are nonprofits are also very dicey. There's plenty of them that are not very honest, and so unfortunately, I don't have a better answer to that as far as validating everything that we say is true. But
Right. Well,
yeah.
the other reason, I remember when I first started with AFTT back in 2023 when we started raising money. So I have a huge background in raising huge amounts of money in the world. And I love doing that. But I've always been on the outside world, like in the real world is how I say
Mhm.
it. And I don't mean that to be disrespectful in any way, shape, or form. But in out, when we're raising large amounts of dollars, like you're looking at a $30,000 to $50,000 a month nut that you have to meet cover all this. And if you're going to grow, like the more we have conversations like this, the more your needs going to go up and the more the demand's going to go up. Like we're
Yeah.
marketing right here. And so that's, you need another $20,000 a month. You need another 50,000. Like I feel like that you're kind of meeting your demand as you're raising your money kind of thing. Like, but if somebody were to give a very large gift, I'm just saying, but even for people who give $10 a month, it's 501c3. We're not used to giving money to a tax deductible
Oh,
organization. So any money coming to you, not you personally, obviously, but Bridges and Balm, it's a 501c3. It is a deductible contribution. Um, because it is a charitable organization. So that is so we did not come out of a charitable giving outside of handing cash or money to the workers, and we never expected to take a deduction on our tax return. And I
yeah.
did not realize, I have been out for so many years, I did not realize what a hurdle that was going to be in the education process of teaching people how to give money, real money that had a real impact. And
Hmm.
so I just want to clarify that once again because there's a huge lack of understanding around that.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for that. I think, we have tried to only do two fundraisers a year. And one of the things that I'm really proud of about the organization is that it has been well run. Like we have people that know how to financially project growth and manage risk. And so we don't want to keep harassing the donors. Hey, we didn't quite plan well enough. We're going to run out of money.
Right.
But we also don't want to like oversell, like, oh, we got, and then build this huge reserve. It's like, what are you doing with that much money just sitting there? So we plan to do two a year, and then try not to do more than that unless there's for specific occasions. And then we plan on that meeting our needs. Now, if the demand changes dramatically, and one of the things we were worried about was if like the Wanted Act fund collapsed, if they shut it down, there was a bunch of survivors that were getting therapy through that. And if we needed to absorb them all at once, then all of a sudden our plans are out the window. Fortunately, it looks like that's not going to happen, at least not quickly. And so we were able to kind of plan it and not, state here's what we need, this is our target, and then we're good for 6 months. And then we've been able to do that in the last few years.
That's interesting. I want to add something. Sarah's saying, don't forget to ask for company match. Huge. Anybody that works for a large corporation, even small corporations these days, it is a straight tax deduction to the corporation as well. And one of the employee benefits that they often offer is that they will match any contributions that you're making to a 501c3 organization of your choice. So if you work for any kind of organization, just be very, very clear that that is often an option. And they're happy to do it because it's a tax deduction for them too. So, and it's not income that is, you're not going to get taxed on the income to you. So, just to be very clear, thank you, Sarah, for making that point. That's a very good point.
Yeah, and we've tried to get into some of that infrastructure. Like we're registered with Benevity and a few other platforms that try to get you into the broader corporate systems where sometimes we're getting donations or we're in a drop down from the corporate matching websites. So that's easier for that to be done. We also have expertise on staff about doing things like, minimum withdrawals from your 401k every year. You can have that go straight to charities. So all that kind of thing is stuff that's already happening. And when people come to us, we tend to, work with them directly rather than broadcast, market, hey, help us out with your 401ks. It feels a little bit, but all those things are possible. And we have the, expertise on enabling people to do that. And we
Right.
have people getting corporate matches now as well. That's
Yeah.
people that know how to do that are already doing that. But yes, thanks for the reminder. It's an option for you.
Yeah.
So,
Have you done any grant writing? That's one of my other questions.
we have not. We talked to Natalie about that a little bit with AFTT was into that. It's just not in our. We don't have the expertise on staff to take that on. So that is a gap we have.
Well, it's a huge, you have to apply for a really big grant to make it worth. And then there's
Mm.
all the reporting that goes along with it. So, okay, we can have that in a different conversation. That was between you and me, sorry. Okay, survivor centered approach. Let's move on. Talk to us about what that means. What does that look like? Um, I know Pathways does a lot of that, but I'm going to let you answer it.
Yeah. Yeah. So fortunately, we have staff that have taken AFTT's training or pathways. So being having proper training to interact, even though we don't interact with survivors on the survivor side, the Venn diagram's pretty overlapped when we're talking about former workers, unfortunately. And part of that's just the nature of the community. Like there is just a lot of survivors. And so so we have to have a survivor centered approach no matter what. And it's a lot trickier in some ways because it's not just training about sexual abuse survivors. It's about how to interact with somebody who has been so enmeshed into an ideology and a small group of people that they've lost their identity and they aren't really don't even really know how to advocate for themselves and don't feel comfortable, don't feel worthy. Like all these things. But it's not even something that I understand and can relate to. And so it's a steep learning curve.
Yes.
What we haven't done, like we thought initially that we would bring on former workers that felt that they could take this on and would have more insight on how to navigate this. But what happened was when 2023 came down, all of the former workers were just slammed as well. Like it was a whole nother level of processing for them. And so we quickly realized, yeah, it's not a good uh, population to tap into to help on this front. Like we just need to figure it out and learn and try to be as careful as we can to because that was a lot to ask. It just wasn't, and even as it is, like we're all going through a lot of processing, and it's heavy, and so that is, that's when I say survivor centric, it's just like abuse survivor. People have been abused in many different kind of ways. To be really sensitive, and the thing that we focus on the most is that what we're trying to give them is autonomy and teach them how to have autonomy
Yes.
and not become another strings attached type of organization that
Right.
imposes things on their lives. And so that's kind of this foundational idea that we operate with, and that kind of guides how we interact and really try to get them to lead what they need without leaving them, not because a lot of times they don't know how to advocate for themselves and know how to do that. We'll teach them that, really encourage them on that front, and then work with them to make sure they're leading where they want their lives to go.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of times they don't even know what they need and they don't know what they want and where to go. Or, I had a worker come here, as you know, for 2.5 months right out of the gate. And that was a very steep learning curve.
Hmm. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Um, okay. Um, so we've already kind of covered number 6, which is why supporting ex-workers matters. Um, Pretty clearly. I'll say if anybody has any questions about that specifically, but I here's my question that I wanted to ask you on that specifically. If there happens to be a worker that's on the inside and is staying because they don't feel like they have a way out, what would you say to them?
Yeah. I think I would say that I I just want them to be aware that there are people that care and love them with no expectations.
And no
Like,
judgment.
yeah, it's and I think that is the really unique thing that they need to hear, that we are supporting, like we when we help former workers, we're not telling them what to do with their lives. Like that they can be going to meetings still, they can be self-medicating, like that's up to them. Like as long as they're not a risk to harm other people or themselves, it's up to them. Like they get to lead their lives, and we don't have any judgment on what that looks like, and
Right.
any no expectations. And that is the underlying message that I think the reality of some of this in the work, like they're navigating all kinds of things. So it's not just that they might be afraid of where am I going to find a meal. There's probably a lot of social emotional safety
Consequences.
that they're navigating, right? So
Yes.
we can only kind of cover, like, you don't need to fear you're going to be on the streets. Like we can help with that, but are you going to have a just a very traumatic social experience, social
Right.
that probably is what they're navigating. And I think just knowing that there will be people that care and will
Right.
reach out and will be there for you, um That's the biggest thing.
Right. Since this is public, I just wanted to make that statement. If anybody does hear this, if anyone has any questions, contact Steve. Is also an admin here on Survivor Rights, so feel free to reach out. And yes, Abe is saying they have no skills to handle life. That is correct, and it is a very sad state of affairs. Um, so, is there any way that we can reduce that, what I call institutional defensiveness, inside the system? Is there like any way to help them or reach them?
You know, I don't have a good answer to that. What it reminds me of though is that when Dr. Janjic, when she did that interview with Mark Simmons, I came away frustrated because one of the things he asked her was, "How can you help somebody get out?" And she was like, "You can't. Like you could just kind of be there available to them when they decide." And I was like, "Are we? Is that really where the state we're at, where we can't actually help break the fear cycle somehow?" Um, but that's she's she's the expert, right?
Right.
Uh, Dr. Lalich, that's who I'm looking for.
Yes.
Um, and so I think it's just we're not far enough along in our understanding of how these things work to really have a good answer to how can we make like we're being vilified the whole time, right? So we're
Yes.
being presented as not safe for them, and so it's such a brilliant design that here's these people that love and care for them, readily available, and we're believed to be dangerous.
Yes.
And I don't know, I don't have a good answer to how to fix that.
That's partly why I wanted to make this site public, because I do want this information to be public. We are completely transparent. What you see is what you get. This is it. This is who we are. This is how much we care. Beverly Prine is saying this morning, she said to a current worker, there are assistance organizations in place ready to help regardless of the status of worker needing assistance, without judgment, without criticism. Please tell all your colleagues. I would say that if we all started saying that to anybody that's on the, if we have access, I've been pretty cut off from all that, but some people still have access to workers that are current workers. Just let them know repeatedly. It's not going to be one time. It's going to take many repetitions of, and probably from multiple people, to say it's going to be okay, and that they'll catch you when you fall, you know um so
Let me just say what this tends to look like when it's successful. Usually it's somebody that they're close to. In this case, somebody that's no longer going to meetings, but somebody that has been close to for years, where there's an open, trusted communication. And that person is able to eventually convince them that things will be okay. And so I think it's really those kind of relationships that are successful, and it's those people in those kind of positions where they're able to somehow be a trusted confidant of their struggle and can hold their hand and make sure I will be holding your hand all the way through.
right.
And so yeah, I really appreciate that, Bev. I think if you are a very trusted person to one of those people that you outreach to, that's going to be the channel they most likely leverage to find their way out.
Yep, I agree. On the opposite side of that, Marsha Ransom is also saying, I think it's also very valid to understand that we can't help people who don't understand that they need help.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That's always true. Like until they want help, and first they want like it's very rare for us to get somebody reaching out to us right after they leave the work. Like
Right,
that's not the space they're in. So it's going to be some time before they realize, they decide how they want to move forward, and
right.
whether they want our help or not. It takes some time at minimum.
Yeah. Um, Okay, that's a lot. So, are there any? Actually, this is perfect. Abe was saying maybe we could have interviews with ex-workers. The very next thing, number 7, is stories. Are there any testimonials out there that we could share, or that you can share, about what the before and impact has been on their lives, um, or anything around that?
Yeah, so I have 3 excerpts that I that were sent to us for donors to send to donors so that people could hear at least directly. These are anonymized, although I think in some cases they weren't so concerned, but we did anonymize them. And these went out with our thank yous. I think at least some of these went, but I'll go ahead and read these out loud. So these are three different former workers that are writing to say thank you. We're giving them opportunity to say thanks to the donors. The first one says, I would like to say a heartfelt thank you to all for generously supporting me. Your support has allowed me to return to university part-time this year to become skilled in a future profession. I have been working part-time alongside my studies, and I could not have afforded my general living costs on a part-time wage while returning to the university. Trying to further my education feels crucial in my future working years. Being able to gain work in a profession that pays more than the base wage feels critical, especially when you have lost 15 years of earnings. And superannuation is the word they use, but basically the magic of compound interest. Although it will be a slow process to complete my studies, I'm very thankful for the support to balance the costs. Your support has allowed me to afford professional help with trained psychiatrists that I could not have afforded on my current wage. Your ongoing help allows me to rebuild my life and work through the trauma and abuse that I was subjected to in the work that continues to influence my daily life in a negative way. Rebuilding your life at the age of 40 is not the same as doing it at 20, which so few people understand. When you have grief, trauma, and health issues and 15 missed years of income, starting it is overwhelming on the hard days. The stress of money and the future is always in the back of your mind. Your help eases some of the burden that we often feel. Thank you for having a heart towards a group of people so often forgotten or overlooked. The next one says, lately words escape me. They seem inadequate to convey the immense feelings within, and yet I must try because I want you to know the deep gratitude that is there for you, for your ongoing support. Thank you for understanding the complexity of what we face as ex-workers and survivors of all manner of abuse. Thank you for not walking by when most others have. Thank you for your financial support that is necessary to rebuild a life again, especially when you have limited mental, emotional, and physical capacity to do so. You are providing a life-changing and life-saving gift. Your support is part of the essential fire burning under my little vessel, alchemizing every painful experience into medicine. So thank you. Clearly, they've become good writers.
Yeah. Okay. Well, they've written a lot of letters in their life.
And this last one says, dear donors, thank you. Your support has been a huge support for me. I honestly don't know how things would have been without your help, without paying for my therapy. When I fell sick, the workers said they would support me, but it didn't happen. And of course, my family also struggles. So God sent me. This is the people that helped them, as well as Bridges and Balm. This is not about the financial support only. Yes, it's true. I really don't know where I would be without the financial help and without advocates for the truth who first helped me with my therapy. But to me, the most important thing is the true support and care I feel from each one of you. I wish there would be something I could do to pay you back. One day I will be more involved in all of this and I will help others. And I hope someday to pay back all the love and care I've received and felt.
Love that. Ah, that makes me want to cry.
Yeah. I wasn't sure I'd get through it, honestly. When I was practicing, I didn't get through it. So I was like a little worried,
That
but
is, ah,
the thing is, I know the people, all three of the people that wrote that, they're just incredible. But what they've been through is like, they're their stories, but uh, they're heart wrenching. It's just so rough.
this is the part that, when I laid awake Friday night and I got all mad about everything and I was mad, it's just, again, how do they sleep at night? How do you just, somebody gives what they give and have such a huge heart? It's like kind of like Brad and I talked about on Sunday, like for those of us that have left and our hearts are just literally broken open with so much love and so much care, so much compassion for this community, and we give so much. And it's just, I, I don't understand how they can reconcile that. I don't. I can't.
No, I'm with you.
I just can't. Okay. For the sake of time, we need to keep moving. Long-term vision. Is this something, talk about the need now? What's the need going to look like? What's the 5-year plan? What is six? How are you going to define success in this?
Yeah, and so this is a tougher one because there is no end because they're still getting new workers starting, um, and this is a charity that is being fed by an organization that refuses to actually fix the problem they're creating. So that's complex. I think though, that old analogy of like the story of the little boy after the storm and there's fish blowing up on the beach everywhere, and the little boy's picking up the fish and throwing, or I think that one version is sea turtles throwing one at a time back in the ocean. They're just scattered everywhere, and and some adult comes over and tells the little boy, like, why are you doing this? You can't save all these fish. And it's like, little boy says, well, I made a difference for that one. And like, that's kind of how you have to operate. It's like, we're not going to solve this problem. We're not going to help everybody, but we can help this one, and then this one, and this one, and that's literally the strategy. Like success to us, we're not going to measure success by solving the problem and helping everybody. Like, it would just be overwhelming. That's not how it would be demoralizing to look at it that way. So um, we measure success by being able to make a difference to individuals, and as many individuals as we can afford, and that are willing to come to us, are interested in our help, and that's the balance we try to strike. And right now we have that. Like, we're able to afford helping all those that have come to us so far, both on the survivor front, and the other entities are helping with that load too. Like, we'd be overwhelmed without United Open Arms and Wanda Nadak on staff, and maybe if they collapse, then we have to pick up the gap. But right now, the supply and demand has been met, and we're helping those that are ready to be helped, and that's success.
I love that. That's a great answer. Talk to us for a second about, I want to have this conversation, ways to support beyond money or with money. How can people support you? Tina had asked a question about donating. Tina, there is a fund in Canada that you can do through payroll support. So let me just also back to the tax deductible thing that I said earlier. If anybody doesn't know this, if you do a tax deductible contribution out of your payroll from anybody that where you work, um, it reduces your taxable income. So there's a lot of reasons to do it through your payroll if you can do that. Otherwise, you have to wait till the very end and do it on your taxes. So, with standard deductions being what they are these days, we can have a whole different conversation about that. But um, anyway, I want to talk about how can anybody that sees this, that knows people, whether they're 2x2s or not, talk to us about monthly donating, corporate matching, volunteer roles that are available, what professional services they might need. If there's a lawyer out there, do you need legal services? Do you need, you know, and how can we share awareness? What can we do to support this vulnerable group of people?
Yeah. So love the question. As far as supporting financially, you can go to our website, bridgesandbalm.org, and there's a donate button at the top. You can set up one time or recurring donations. If you're gonna like plan to give once a year, it's better to break it up into 12 monthly and just do the recurring, because it's easier for us to plan um, with recurring. So, but do it however you want. If you're going to donate, we don't, obviously not going to complain. But just in terms of our planning, if you do plan to donate on a ongoing basis, it's better if it's set up that way so we know we can plan on it versus we don't know if you're going to do it again. Um, open roles. We're actually, I think we're going to post some positions shortly, so that we kind of describe, like it's always dicey to ask for help when it comes to charities, because like people are like, well, what are you going to have me do, and how much time is it going to take? Like, it's hard to commit to something when you don't know what it is. So we're going to post some job recs and then how many hours, but we're going to we really could use some help on accounting, so accounts payable type work, just distributing money. That's an ongoing kind of tactical thing we do, um, paying both clinicians as well as getting money internationally to workers. And then we have, like, really we could use somebody that has a background in operations of case management. We've set up some systems and processes, but really we should have it more sophisticated operation. So like I would love to have an operations like director that just defines the systems and the procedures, that kind of knows what they're doing in this area more than me. Like I've developed our system so far, but they definitely could do better. And then we always could use case managers, and those are people that just work on the former worker committee that onboard, handle managed cases. I mean, we don't have a huge need for that, but that's one of the crucial roles, and that's just a very much a public service kind of role where you're interacting and making sure they're taken care of and go through the process with them. Um, but so like those are some roles. We'll post those and share them out. But I think in general, what I really might ask is that just awareness. Like we don't spend any money on marketing. Like this is our marketing, and so we really depend on word of mouth. And us marketing is almost like offensive. Like what we need word of mouth marketing that we're trustworthy from individuals. Like that's the kind of marketing that's going to be successful. If you believe in our charter or any of the entities that are in this doing something similar, endorse us and tell people that endorse us to people that are candidates for support getting therapy or former workers or people that might be donating money. Any of those are we need them to trust us. This is a group of people who's been had trust just shattered, right? And so to ask them to trust an organization, which is already offensive, like why is there this professional organization, 501c3 that exists in the 2x2 church community? So it's going to be people that they trust that says, hey, I think these people are doing a good thing. I support their mission, and maybe you should too, or maybe you should get help from them because you qualify for it. Um, yeah, so that's the ask is just if you support us, please tell people that you do.
I love that. While we're on this conversation, it wasn't on the list, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Have you ever had a conversation about what amount of money you would need to have an endowment or to have a foundation that would be self-sustaining? And take that, like, I mean, would $20 million make a difference? Would $50 million? Like, I don't know. Have you ever had the conversation? I guess I'm asking. Or are you just
No,
trying to get
we
by?
haven't. Yeah, we're just trying. Well, we've had. So what's starting to happen now is if people are starting talking to us about putting us in their will because like they're now
Right.
thinking, well, instead of giving to the workers, I'll give to this one that still supports the workers, but a
Yes.
different cohort of workers. So that's starting to happen, and I think in the longer term that will happen. The reality is, like some of these people that we're supporting, they're not probably like it'd be optimistic to think they're ever going to be able to self-sustain. And so certainly, I think almost half of our foreign workers are already in beyond working years. So we're going to be supporting them until their health fails. So that's just kind of the reality. And so what we have looked at is like, what is that longer term? Like, do we have like trust that we set up for individuals that kind of make sure they're taken care of, and then once they pass, then it rolls into a broader trust. Like we're starting to have those conversations. It's a much more complex discussion, and it requires a lot more money, and we're not raising that kind of money, and we don't even have a plan to raise that kind of money. So yes, that I think in the longer term, right now we're just trying to stop, make sure people are okay.
Yeah.
But the much longer term is a little daunting, quite honestly, to figure out. But I think we're gonna have to get there eventually.
And I think you will. I'm just planting the seed. I mean, I know you've already had the conversation, but obviously it's, in the real world outside, that's how foundations work, and that's how becomes a sustainable operation. So,
Well, as you know, the money is there. I think
oh,
one of the things that we're going to struggle with is that it's really hard for people in this community to like know the money's readily available to solve this problem, and it's not being put to that use. And I don't know how to fix that. And so it's like, well, I guess that's not going to happen. So we'll have to find a different way. I'm still hopeful that could happen. It will probably only happen with civil lawsuits, but
yes,
um,
that'll
that
happen. That's coming.
yeah, so maybe that's if that does happen, then those will be set up that
Yeah,
way, I would imagine already. So in the meantime, yeah, we'll
yeah.
fill
I'm
the
not
gap.
sure who they should be more worried about, the FBI or civil lawsuits that are heading for them directly and individually. So that's on
Yes.
them. Okay, so what about if somebody wanted to sponsor a survivor? What's that number? Or sponsor a worker? What's that number? Do you have it?
Yeah, it's varies.
Mm.
Honestly, I don't love that idea.
Okay.
Um, because and you well, you can't sponsor a survivor because we don't know who they are. So if you
True.
want to sponsor a survivor individually. We do allow sponsoring a specific worker, but what's weird is like, unless you know them well, you don't even know they're being supported.
Right.
Like you might sponsor a worker, and then you're giving money, and then they're like, I don't want money from you. Like it's just awkward. So
Yeah.
I think, and this also feels like it gets into the territory of fairness. Like, well, why are you supporting that worker? Why are they more important than the other workers
Yeah,
struggling,
I
right?
like that. Very good answer. Very good answer. We are definitely over on time. I'm going to open this up very quickly for questions. If anybody has any specific questions that you would like to ask Steve, otherwise, I am going to give you last word, which is what I always do. I want to thank you for your time and everything that you did in preparing for this, and everything that you do all day, every day. I cannot, there's not enough thank yous in the world for everything that you do, Steve. And I just also, every time I talk to you, I still want to say, just your perspective in general is just always on point. It's just well thought out. It is reflective, and it is forward looking. And that's what we need. That's what this whole thing needs, is to keep this train moving forward and not staying stuck. So I want to thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you, Crystal. I'm very much just sorting this all out myself, and
I know.
I really love the help from people like you and the entire community that are crowdsourcing learning.
Yes, that's what this is, crowdsourcing learning. Final word goes to you.
Yeah, so just to say, I just repeat the call to action, please. If you believe in the mission of any of the grassroots organizations, whether it's Pathways or United Open Arms or us or Renewal North, any of them, please tell people that, share that openly, that you support them and feel that we deserve support and trust, that people would come to us for help if they need it.
I love that. There is one final question. Beverly's asking, are there support organizations in places, especially for the Spanish speaking workers or ex workers? Is that specific?
There is not an entity. So we helped get Renewal North, finding people to work in Canada. We are working in an entity in getting an entity going in UK that would also maybe handle all of Europe and maybe even South Africa. That's early stage, but we're hoping to, like, one of the things that's kind of offensive, quite honestly, is like the US is already kind of has this reputation of trying to be the world police, right? So when we go out there and say, hey, we're going to help you in all across the world, we are the organization, like it just doesn't sit well outside of the US.
Yes.
And so we don't want it to be that way. We want people to take care of their own in the region, create organizations that are self-funded, and you can imagine somebody in South Africa donating to us doesn't feel great either. Like, this is this rich nation and I'm giving money to them. So we do want that to happen, but you have to have people willing to step up and do that, in those regions. So we are the only entity currently that would help former workers anywhere outside of Canada. Canada's the only one that's covered outside of us, and then survivors, as well. Like, we don't have to worry about that, because if you're a survivor anywhere in the world, if they go to Pathways, and then Pathways will have an organization that covers anywhere in the world. We're one of them. I don't think we're the only one, though, that makes sure we would cover their therapy costs wherever they're at. So it doesn't matter if it's Spanish, it could be Philippines, it could be Vietnam. We can cover anywhere in the world.
Got it. Well, you're changing lives one at a time. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you to everyone that's watching. Thank you to everyone that's going to be watching. There is a huge need. If anybody has any suggestions, I know Steve is very open-minded. Feel free to reach out. If you would like to be a donor, please reach out to him as well. If you have any other just general questions, I'm happy to just take some of that. If it's something I can answer